Many thanks to Resonix Sound Solutions for making this podcast a reality. Find out more about Resonix sound treatments at resonixsoundsolutions.com. Welcome to the SQOLOGY podcast. This is Klifton, and as usual, I am joined by Mike Myers. Hello, Mike.
Hello, everyone.
And this episode, we are joined by a special guest, Dave Dunn of Garmin.
Hey, guys. Appreciate you having us.
Absolutely. As everybody knows, Garmin took over the JL brand, especially in the 12-volt car audio marine space. Mike's experience with JL as a brand goes quite a few years back. Mine started about 30 years ago. I heard the 15W6 for the first time, and that really kind of opened my eyes to sub bass that sounded good, not just loud. I've been around a lot of subwoofers, mostly PA and stuff in my life, and I had like Kicker Solo Barrack and other stuff, but something about the 15W6 that, I've always loved big subs, and there was something special about that. And that was kind of my entryway to JL in the early 2010s or so. Hybrid Audio Technologies, which I was working for, which I still am in a way. And JL kind of had a partnership with the team. So if you're on Team Hybrids, then you had access to JL as far as sponsorships and everything else. So I had several cars that were outfitted with JL amplifiers. JL became much more of an amplifier brand over time, not just a subwoofer brand. Also, when SQOLOGY started, like in the mid 2010s, around 2015, 2016, JL did do a lot of help in terms of marketing and helped support some of the causes we were after in that with some product, and actually financially contributing to some of the nonprofits that we were promoting to build the shows and everything. So JL's been there kind of all the way along with the key people over the years. But as far as present over the past, I'd say 5+ years, there hasn't been any money transfer as far as that goes or anything. We've had a relationship with Garmin just as far as having an open conversation. And I've personally helped put them in touch with the key people who are doing events now, which isn't myself, but more the key people who are doing events in that to kind of help that transition, whatever. But Garmin is not a sponsor of the podcast or not a sponsor of SQOLOGY or anything. This effort, as far as having this done, it started with Matt Morgenthau and myself. I've been trying to get Matt on for a while. And then the changes over time with the branding and everything, we felt this was a little bit more current event and a better gateway right now to make sure some of these outlying questions are answered and get it, instead of feeding the hype machine, actually get some core information from the people who are actually involved here. Dave being one of them, obviously. It's funny because I have experience with both. I started in car audio when I was about 10. I started cycling when I was about 12. So I've also used Garmin products for the majority of my life. I'm wearing a Garmin watch now. I have, a Garmin head unit on my bicycle. I use Garmin products more than I've ever used JL products, to be honest. And also, I mentioned with the hybrid audio brand, as many people know, a few years ago, that was purchased by Soundz, who I currently work for. So I've also kind of gone through internally myself. I've kind of gone through some of this process of navigating branding when a bigger fish kind of takes over the fish that there's a lot of enthusiast base for. Mike, I know some of the past interviews we've had with you, I know JL's come up in some of the key demo cars and stuff, and obviously you're a dealer now, you're a dealer for JL. You have been involved throughout this process as well, with both sides, with mine and JL and Garmin. But tell us about your history and what your background is with that.
Yeah, the earliest interactions I've had, with JL audios, so of course in, just like friends' cars and stuff like that,
Right.
and, reading through the magazines and stuff like that. But, like as far as like in-person type stuff, the first time was probably like the 1996 IASC World Finals in Greenville, South Carolina. JL Audio had a large booth set up inside the event hall, and they had that little Mini Cooper set up, and we got to listen to that. It was a really cool experience. And I still have a picture of me and my brother, with that little Mini Cooper, back in '96. That was really cool. And, so after that, I got involved in the industry around 97. And the first place that I had worked, we weren't really JL Audio dealers, but, it was around that time where JL Audio had brought in the W6 and stuff like that. So one of the first woofers that was kind of designed around smaller enclosures and kind of really changed how much bass you could get and how much space in the subwoofer realm for cars. So that was a really cool moment in time. And there were several others, around that same time that kind of came out with competing technologies. And then, fast forward a few years later, around 2003, I ended up working for a place called Audio Specialties, and they were a JL Audio dealer. And that was the first time I'd worked alongside with JL Audio representatives and stuff like that with their brand. And it's been a great experience, ever since. And then, I went to Best Buy for quite a number of years, and now I'm back over here at the Sound Factory. And, we've been JL Audio dealers since, we've purchased the place in 2018.
Right.
And so it's been an integral part of our business, and, has a lot of brand recognition and brand loyalty that brings people to our door.
For sure. Well, we've rambled long enough. Dave, tell us about your role as far as Garmin goes. I know you, from the little bit of research I was able to do, I don't think you've been involved in the 12-volt space the whole time, or Garmin corporate. It looks like some of the marine and stuff like that, but I'll let you go into that. But your role with Garmin, and then how you got involved with the JL Audio portion of that.
Absolutely. I'm the senior director of marine sales at Garmin. So I lead the sales team for our marine and RV divisions. You're wondering what does marine have to do with 12 volt? Well, first off, give you some back history of me. I'm a music nerd since I was a kid. I was the kid in high school that had bandpass boxes, the Les 10, and just picked it out on my own. And so today I have all JL in my new truck today. So I've just been one of those. I've always been drawn to 12 volt and audio in general.
Nice.
Being at Garmin, so Garmin's not new to the audio space because we bought Fusion in 2013.
Right.
And so we took that business from essentially bankrupt to quite a big business over the course of about 12 years or so. And then fast forward to now, where the JL audio opportunity came up, and I was the biggest proponent, and the cheerleaders like, we have to buy this. This is awesome. It's a great fit for Garmin. And Garmin only buys companies that complement what Garmin does. And when you look at JL, they're so similar to Garmin, in fact, that they design, they build, manufacture, everything as far as their products go is exactly what Garmin does. Their engineering resources, their facility, everything was exactly the DNA of Garmin. And so the logical step for marine, because we had the Fusion brand, JL was making a big resurgence in the marine audio space. So that was obviously a natural fit. But if you look deeper than that, JL is also in the 12 volt for cars. They can be in RVs, power sports. Garmin is also in all of those. The only space Garmin doesn't traditionally play in today is the home audio space. But that's where Garmin can come in with our resources and take that division to the next level also. Because again, the home audio stuff, where you start talking about in-wall subs and some of the Gotham and Fathom big subs they have, those are expensive products. And Garmin has customers that have planes, that have large boats. We can talk to that customer. So the whole JL ecosystem matched with Garmin so well that it was, when the opportunity came up, that we just had to jump on it. And still excited this day. There's absolutely no buyer's remorse. There's been some speed bumps along the way, and we can talk through those. And at the time, this was Garmin's largest acquisition on the marine side. So it's been a big undertaking, and we want to make sure we get it right. We're not going to be perfect, but our goal is to take JL Audio to the next level.
Within Garmin's focus, then, it sounds like JL's marine products and Garmin's marine umbrella is kind of where the majority of the cluster is as far as the umbrella goes. I mean, is that the primary focus, is the marine side?
No, we want to do it all.
Okay.
Garmin's divided up into segments. So there's a marine segment, aviation, fitness, outdoor, et cetera. So the way it works is the Garmin Marine division is actually what purchased JL Audio.
Okay.
We're ultimately responsible for the profit and loss and the vision of all JL Audio. So not just Marine, but the whole ecosystem.
Okay.
So it just falls under our business segment.
Okay.
Obviously, Marine's the easiest for us because, again, with the Fusion, we had a big market share there. Now you combine arguably the two largest manufacturers in the marine space, you combine them, that's a pretty powerful force.
Right.
So us, that's the low-hanging fruit. But where we think we can innovate and bring some engineering resources and some marketing resources to is the 12-volt side, again, the power sports and the home. So we're actually going to put a bigger emphasis on those markets in the near term than we are marine because we feel
you already have it
marine space.
Marine. Yeah. It sounds like the opportunity came to you and then it was like, yeah, we got to do this. You weren't necessarily going out looking to do this as far as, hey, let's grab a XYZ brand and build the 12-volt side. It was more organic as far as that goes?
Organic. It was just right place, right time. When the opportunity was presented to us that JL was available to be purchased, actually, there was a couple of rounds where it went around. The first time it came around to us, we were very interested, but for several reasons, it just didn't make sense at the time. And then some time passed, and as things changed a little bit, the opportunity came around a second time. I was like, all right, we got to give this a shot. And again, if you were buying it just for marine, Fusion was doing well enough that we would have been fine. But it was like, we can do so much more with audio if we had a brand name like JL. Fusion's great. It's known in the marine space. It's actually really large overseas. Fusion has a much bigger presence like in Europe than even JL does. Globally, Fusion's an okay name. But when you have a powerhouse like JL, that's where you combine it with Garmin and the resources that we have. That's where the vision came in. It's like, okay, we can live along with Fusion, what we've got, and do okay, or we can become a legitimate audio business. And so that's where it made sense to move forward with JL.
Obviously, there's speculation on it that, well, they wanted the JL contracts, so they got that. But it sounds like Garmin has, and I think it's pretty natural, especially within the GPS space and all the products that are geared towards marine and everything else over decades of time. Garmin has that side pretty well covered as far as clients go. They don't need JL necessarily for that. JL is a known brand in the marine space, obviously, for audio, but navigating the branding side of it, I think a lot of people understood that, JL is a known name in the space. But then when the branding externally, I'm not saying necessarily on the products, but, as far as through social media, the website and everything else, when that branding switched to Garmin Audio versus JL Audio being at the forefront, and I know it's simple stuff like URL change and the name of the Facebook page or whatever else, but people automatically turn that into, well, now I have a Garmin Audio 12W6 versus a JL Audio 12W6. And then, if it was the brand that was important, why are we rebranding the marketing of the product that JL has always been very strong in the marketing space? Not saying that Garmin isn't, obviously, but JL has not sucked in that department over the years. So with the confusion around the Garmin Audio branding, that sparked a strong reaction from everybody throughout. It's created quite a ripple that continues to be there. But can you walk us through some of the reasoning there and your all's perspective on that?
Yeah, I told you we'd make some mistakes, and we'll probably make some more. But the good news is we're happy to say, yeah, we screwed up and we're going to fix it. But when I say that, I don't mean that we screwed up in the fact that calling it Garmin Audio, it was just the message could have been delivered differently and the wording could have been different. Ultimately, it boils down to JL Audio as a company doesn't exist anymore. And so that means there's no URL, there's no webpage, there's none of that. So you lose verification on your Facebook, your Instagram, all your social media accounts. So there's no way for us to keep the JL Audio names. The only way to do it is rename it Garmin Audio. But it also gives us an opportunity, again, with the breadth of products that we make. And if we're going to become a legitimate audio company, it gives us latitude to go into aviation where Garmin is way more powerful than JL,
right? Or
RV or car. It blends two really, really strong brand names, but the way the message was delivered could have been done a lot better. So there's zero chance that the JL name goes away. You'll notice in the newer logo, it says JL Audio Garmin brand. So that's going to stay because we are proud that we are Garmin. It's no secret that Garmin is the parent company, but JL Audio, the logo, the branding is not going to go away. The products are going to say JL. They're not going to say Garmin. There could be a Garmin mentioned somewhere on the back magnet of a speaker that you'd never see it just because that's our manufacturing logo or something. But aside from that, the customer-facing products will be JL Audio. There was no intention to insinuate that things are going to be rebranded as Garmin Audio, or to your point, it's going to be, Garmin TW3s or whatever it is. They're all going to stay the same, but Garmin Audio is the overarching umbrella for our new audio business.
And especially since you also have Fusion. And again, I've been through this process myself, so I'm probably projecting here a little bit, but it's one of those things where you're looking to legitimize Garmin Audio as the thing going forward long term, and then have those segments of products that are geared into those specialties where the markets are. Fusion, especially worldwide, like you mentioned, is going to have probably a lot more quantity ability than maybe JL is, but then JL has a much more specific specialty that can really raise the tide in terms of what you're doing. And I think part of the fear here is there's two sides of things when people buy a brand name, and it seems like in the 12 volt space, especially in car audio, especially among brands that people love, Precision Power, MB Court, the list goes on, of people typically overseas somewhere who have bought a beloved brand name and then slapped that logo on junk and then sent it out. Whereas if you go back, Rockford Fosgate and MB Court, Rockford Fosgate bought MB Court and then promptly replaced the products with Rockford products inside the MB Court boxes. And people were felt a little bit betrayed in that because it wasn't the products that they were after. I know with our own transition, what I've gone through, it was the opposite. It was one of those things where the buying brand was the bigger one as far as revenue goes and everything else, but they really wanted the products of the brand that they purchased. And it sounds like that same alignment is what's happening with Garmin and JL, where setting this up in a different scenario, it'd be probably a lot longer path and more difficult to get there, obviously. But if Garmin want to enter themselves in the high-end audio space, and let's say it's 12 volt, and they were to build that manufacturing, the branding, the IP, the industrial design, all that, it sounds like Garmin would probably be going, well, we'd probably end up making something a lot like JL Audio and then be competing against it and not have the heritage to go along with it. Whereas if you have the opportunity and obviously the resources and everything else to purchase all that, then that kind of gives you a shortcut to get to that same point while also having that history that comes along with it, right? So is that kind of bringing that to where your thought process was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Garmin has the resources to have started from scratch, but it wasn't part of our core business, so it wasn't in the forefront of what our vision was to do. But when the opportunity came up, it's one of those that they fit so nicely in our niche. So to your point, you buy a well-known brand, you buy all the talent they have in engineering, the history, the resources, the facilities, again, because everything Garmin builds, we build ourselves. We don't outsource anything from concept to finished product. And JL is very similar. Now, they do outsource a few products, but they're also not the scale of Garmin. So with all of our manufacturing locations and just everything, and we had the Fusion team in Auckland, New Zealand. Now we have the JL team in Miramar, Florida. We can arguably be one of the largest, most powerful audio companies in the world with what we've got with our resources. We know our customers are not stupid. So we also didn't want to buy JL Audio and slap Garmin branding on it, or take an older Fusion product and put JL on it and sell it. We know people are going to figure that out.
Right.
And then going back to the Garmin Audio umbrella a little bit and the Fusion overseas, there may be a world where Fusion doesn't even live in the U.S. anymore and Fusion lives overseas. That gives us that latitude to, whether that is a European customer looking at the Garmin Europe's Instagram page, it still says Garmin Audio, but it's focusing on Fusion, where in the U.S., the Garmin Audio will be focused on JL. So once the opportunity came up and we decided we're going to do this, we're going all in. We're going to leverage everything that JL's got, their heritage, their logos, their engineering resources. They're so talented. And that's what we were missing. So when you combine that with Garmin, that's what gets us excited. So we don't want to be, I heard all the horror stories about when we first got into this, and rightfully so, that all these companies that just do growth by acquisition, they gobble everybody up, they strip it down to make a little bit more profit, and then they ruin a great brand.
All right.
That is not our strategy at all. We don't do growth by acquisition. We do growth, because it fits our core DNA. So I know we hadn't shown it yet. So our hope is that the customers and the purists give us the grace to prove to you that we're going to take JL to the next level. Garmin's not cheap products, and JL's not cheap products.
Right.
We're going to really focus on giving that best quality and innovate. JL's not had really, the joke is some of those subwoofers are 20 years old.
Yeah.
So, but there's ways that Garmin can innovate, and we can just, again, get them over that hump to really, really hit that premium brand.
Yeah, I think Manville's joke when he and I interviewed on the same podcast probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I forget which product it was, but he said one of the products, it's old enough to vote now. So, but to me, it kind of sounds like Garmin is kind of the General Motors and JL Audio is kind of the Cadillac within. It's a very specific brand now within a brand versus leading itself, but that doesn't mean that now your Cadillac is now going to be a Chevy Cruze. Like, it's going to stay a Cadillac, right? I mean, that's what you're kind of.
Yeah, to get closer to that, we want to go more Maybach.
Yeah, right.
We're going to really push the limits of JL Audio, and you'll see there's some things in the works that you'll start to see products come not faster because we're speeding things up, but again, JL had so many things in the hopper that they just couldn't get to, just resources reasons.
Right.
That when we came in, that a lot of the work was already done. It was just like, all right, let's do the extra 10 yards and let's get it done. But you'll start to see some things that'll hopefully buy us. The customers give us a little bit more, give us another chance to show you that this is going to be, we're going to move up from where JL is. We're not going to degrade it and bring it down.
For sure. I'm not a dealer. I've never been in that space, but Mike, do you have any questions on the dealer side?
Yeah. A lot of the questions, from the dealer side of it are about, continuity and, our day in, day out, will JL's existing training programs, representative structure, price integrity and things like that remain as they are, like intact, or how does that look moving forward?
A lot of it will stay and some of it will change. As far as the training, absolutely. So Steve Teresi and his team are still heavily involved. Steve leads the team. He's just a wealth of knowledge in audio and then in JL especially. And then you still got Matt Mergenthal and others. Those guys we're leaning on them heavily to teach us the business. And they've just been instrumental in getting the rest of the Garmin team up to speed. And I don't want to even pretend like we're going to get caught up to you guys have been doing it for decades. But at least this gets our foot in the door and start understanding the physics of audio and how all it works. Just the inherent knowledge is going to take us some time, but having those guys gives us the confidence that we've got the right people.
Yeah.
So training, again, with Garmin's resources, we're working on some programs and stuff that are going to give you opportunities for training that you've not had before. So again, it's going to take time. I'm not going to say this is going to happen overnight, but just know that things are working. Pricing, the way JL price things is just a little bit different than the way Garmin does.
Yeah.
I've read all the comments. Trust me, I've been ready to fight some people from some of the comments.
I bet,
it's just frustrating because you can't respond. You can't respond to everybody, but where it goes for pricing, our goal is not to come in and raise prices. We might raise prices, they may go up, but it's because we gave you something better. We gave you a newer product with premium.
Sure.
And of course, the climate of the world now, the tariffs we have to deal with, there could be some incremental price increases, but it's not because Garmin came in and raised prices.
Right.
But their pricing structure of how they sold things was different than what Garmin does. It's because we're a very large company. So we have changed a few things there, but net it's about the same.
Okay.
It's just we categorize. We actually make it easier for our dealers. First thing I noticed when I went into a lot of the dealers, a month after the acquisition, was any given day they couldn't tell you what they paid for a particular product because it depended on what time of month they bought it or if it was on promo, whatever.
Sure.
We do things a lot different. So if it's a dealer listening or whatever, they know exactly what they paid for that product anytime they bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can calculate what they need to sell it for, et cetera. And then to the end consumer, again, our goal is not to come in and jack up prices. If there's opportunities for us to innovate at production and pull costs out of it, we want to pull it out because there's some instances where we're priced out of the market. And so our goal is to cut some of that production cost to where you can actually come back down to where we're at least in the ballpark instead of just out in some parking lot somewhere.
Right.
And then as far as the reps go, that one's a little bit tougher because Garmin, we don't use rep groups for really anything. So if everything we do from product support, everything you do at Garmin is a Garmin employee. So I know that's crazy to think sometimes because the rep groups, they have that knowledge. They've been doing it for decades also. But we like to have control of everything. So there's been some turbulence there with the reps, but with the Garmin sales team of almost 500 people, we feel like we can give you more coverage than we could with the rep groups.
Yeah, and we've already had our Garmin representative come to our shop and introduce themselves. Good. And help us get set up on the dealer portal and stuff like that. So,
yeah, you're gonna find out the dealer portal, like all the resources that we have, it's abundant. So, Garmin's vision is to be the easiest company you do business with, and we're not always, but again, that's our vision. So, but we take feedback even from end customers, from dealers, from everybody. We may have a process that we don't realize is broken, but the dealer's like, this is terrible. And you're right. From a dealer standpoint, it is terrible, and we can make those changes.
That's good.
The problem is, and I'm not minimizing a rep's job in any of this, but I'm just saying that if a company has the resources like Garmin to be able to handle it, it does make sense in that regard because a rep, they can definitely be there to help bridge the conversation. But I mean, how many companies out there don't know who JLR or Garmin is? It's not a niche branding. Oh, let me introduce you to JL Audio. Okay. I know who they are.
Yeah.
And two, especially when things do get turbulent in product availability, pricing, changes like that, everything else, if you're in Mike's position ordering a product and then the rep is like, I don't know, I need to find out, make sure that's in stock. And then the rep contacts now the same person who probably is talking to Mike in this instance from Garmin to find out, well, it's 2025 now. We can do this probably via the dealer portal and having real-time inventory control and everything else. Know that without having to talk to anybody. And who really, I mean, maybe there are people out there who like having those conversations and stuff. But now the reality is, most of the owner, like Mike, isn't sitting in his ivory tower office waiting to have a conversation with a rep. He's neck deep in a car somewhere half the day. So, even though he's an owner of the company. And that's the reality for most car audio shops now. You don't have that owner who is just wheeling and dealing all day. They're doing the work themselves and doing the sales and then going, oh crap, I'm supposed to have that here in 3 days for this job that's coming up.
Yeah.
Having any extra friction in that process isn't helpful to the dealer, and being the easiest company to work with for most dealers, that unfortunately kind of trumps those relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, we wear many hats, as small business owners. And so making it easier, from our standpoint is very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Cause, instead of having to play the telephone game on inventory and stuff like that, it's just really time consuming, and you got to make sure you answer, the phone back, whenever they call you back on stuff. Whereas the dealer portal, you can see all that kind of stuff live, and it's going to be a great help, I think.
Yeah, so you'll see inventory live. You have a direct line to the company. In jail, again, they did a lot of things great, and a lot of things were just resource problems. So inventory, going back through COVID and other times, notoriously they were behind on product. That's where, again, Garmin's business philosophy is going to be different.
Right.
We'll hold 12 weeks of inventory and not blink an eye. It's going to take time to get there, but we will hold a lot more inventory so we can, when you guys need it, we're going to have it.
Nice. How should the current JL Audio dealers expect things like communication and support to look, going forward into the future as this changeover unfolds?
The Garmin rep is going to come in, and like I said, between we have two different divisions. We have like a consumer team, which is going to do a lot of 12 volt, and then we have a marine team, but there's some overlap in others. And I forgot to mention on the reps, we are keeping the rep groups for the home business because, again, that's the one niche that Garmin's not as familiar with. So we're not even going to pretend to know that. That's staying the same completely. Now, that may change in 10 years or whatever as we get more comfortable, but that's just one space that we don't have a lot of coverage to go in those and even talk intelligently about it. So we will keep the reps in that segment. And this is where I, again, ask some of the shop owners and the people in these dealers to give us some grace, because there's some guys and gals that are going to come in and they're going to know their stuff. They won't go toe to toe with you guys, but they can confidently talk about the products and what you need. And there's going to be some that are a little timid because they're just not familiar with it. This is all new to them. And for the last 6 months, we've given the most in-depth audio training that we can give, but it still takes time to see it in the field and understand.
Yeah.
We've done like the whole School of Sound that Steve Teresi puts on. We've done our best to get the team ready. And some are more advanced than others, but our goal is to continue at education and training. So there might be some instances where your rep comes in, they're not as talented as far as the product side goes, but knocking down barriers and getting orders here, figuring things out, they'll be able to do that and do it efficiently. But over time, I think they'll gain your trust and you'll see that they'll learn the product. And then every time you call them, you need them, they're going to be there.
Yeah.
Again, because they have metrics to meet as far as customer satisfaction and everything. So it'll look it'll same but different, but again, it's just keep in mind, it's a direct line to the company. It's not, we're taking the middleman out.
I understand. And it's been, as far as our side so far, it's been pretty seamless. I mean, we really haven't had any problems at all. It's been actually better than I anticipated, honestly. Good. I have a lot of, admiration for the people that have taken this on, because it's not going to be easy. It's a lot of work, a lot of learning.
But I will say the team is eager to do it. Again, we go all in. And so the team they've been very engaged in the trainings. They're eager to get out and do it. And we're right now, we're in this little limbo position to where the company finally transitions to Garmin. JL will absolutely be transferred into Garmin on July 1st. And you've already seen your rep. And for the most part, the reps have been in as many as they can. But
yeah,
starting July 1st, that's when everything changes. It's when you place orders live at Garmin. That's when I think you'll really start to see the difference of how much easier it can be.
Yeah.
So over the time, it's kind of been a crawl, walk, run process as far as keeping things as they were, learning what's there, seeing what needs to change for your long-term goals.
Yeah.
And then this is the transition to that. So, I mean, and taking that into consideration, so can we kind of assume that the things are going into place in July are Garmin's long-term goals in how they do business through JL, as far as retaining the retailer network, doing things the way they're done at that point without going purely wholesale or purely online or that kind of thing? Like, I mean, is that, preserving what is happening in July? Obviously, things can change. I'm not saying 10 years from now I'm going to hold you to something what you're doing today. I'm just saying, like, the goal right now is to maintain and maximize what you're putting into place over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And this has been one of the biggest things. You go to distribution, you're dead in 12 volt. We hear you loud and clear. Amazon, stuff like that. If you'll notice, the marine product actually transitioned faster, again, because we had that dialed in. So we were actually to move all the marine product and processes over late last year. So we've been doing that for over 6 months now. But it's still clean. It's not on Amazon. We don't allow it to be sold on Amazon. If it does sneak up there, somebody did something wrong and we take action. We're doing our best to maintain the integrity of the dealer network. So again, marine's a little different. Garmin is huge in the distribution business in the marine side. So we did open up a few extra distributors on the marine side, but they don't have access to anything else. It's just marine product.
Right.
And you'll notice that even though we did that, the channel stayed fairly clean. There's a couple of dealers that didn't like it because for various reasons, but overall, it was the right decision for Garmin and the bigger business. We've seen the business grow for JL Marine since we've done that. Now with car, 12 volt and power sports and even home, we don't intend to take it to distribution. We don't intend to take it to .coms. These are niche products, which we are very good at. Everything Garmin makes is kind of a niche product. We understand that. We want to invest in and support the dealers that are supporting us. And so if you dilute the brand and you put it at every shop on the street, and not banging on Best Buy, especially since you work there, but we don't want to go mass retail. We don't want to go .com everywhere. We want to build up and get that. These are technical products. If you take your car in the shop and you want a system, you want that, trust that person, and they're going to sell you the best, not just what's on sale or what they can get. And if JL's all over eBay and Amazon, they're probably not going to push JL. So we understand that. We've heard that loud and clear. So our intention is to keep things as they are.
That brings us to like, tech support and stuff like that. So, JL's made a huge investment in tools like JL Max measurement platform and their Tune software and stuff like that. Are these systems, actively maintained and trained moving forward, through this next phase?
Absolutely. Like the Max Tune software it's incredible. And like I'm not a master at it, but I understand it now, and just seeing it, how it works and how either dealers use it. If like a truck may be getting, I don't know, men's only speakers but has a JL amp and stealth box, they're still using Max Tune, even though they're not using all JL products. That's great for the industry. That still gives those enthusiasts that feeling this is awesome. So that's what we want. We want about customers to bring more people back into car audio like it was in the 90s when I was in my heyday.
Right.
Yeah.
We want that to come back. So I think Tune is part of that. But Garmin, I don't even know how many engineers Garmin has now. It's probably in the thousands. It's getting huge.
Wow.
But we've already heard some pretty crazy ideas of how you can take that even further and make that software do things that people haven't envisioned today. So our goal is not only to maintain it, but to make it even better than it is today.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was frustrating for some people in this transition, because I mean, with the Max Tune platform, JL dove right back into the sound quality arena where they were kind of missing for a while. JL had kind of turned into what felt like within the industry, and I would say this started from what I see around early 2010s, like 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. It felt like things got more into a box pushing ideal, and they came out with like the C7s. And so, I mean, it wasn't like it was dormant, but it just didn't feel like they weren't really heavy in the competition scene. They weren't really heavy on they were still like Teresi was obviously still doing school sound and everything else. And that's, super appreciated within the industry, but they weren't as involved in that community as most of the niche brands were. The smaller brands kind of took the lead on the sound quality side of things and really kind of, doing the tuning trainings at a high level and everything else. JL wasn't in that space the way they were in the beginning of the brand in the 80s and 90s, especially. And so when the Max Tune platform really, because even the DSPs, even now, the product that JL has as far as what goes in the car is not at the technical benchmark that other companies are. There are other companies obviously with more advanced in-depth stuff. And that's not to say that's JL needs to do that. JL has their market that they're targeting with that product at the price point and everything else. So not saying that JL's wrong with doing the products. It's just that they fell out of that space. With the Max Tune product and the training and the people involved and everything else, JL dropped back into things and here we are.
Yeah.
At a time that the industry really needed something like that to get it to where many more people get a better tune on their car than most shops are able to. I mean, Mike's one of the best tuners in the country. but there are people in his own town who don't know who he is. Or two, Mike is an exception when it comes to shop owners who can tune at a high level, where the max tune really gives that back. And I think when the max tune was just really kind of gaining momentum, and then the Garmin announcement came, and people were kind of like, huh, great, there goes that.
Yeah.
So hearing the Garmin is pushing that again, or going to continue to push that. And it sounds like you're using that even internally as far as your training and everything else for Garmin itself and the employees, involved to learn sound and do all that better. So, I mean, that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah.
Support the industry. That's a great tool for everybody. And these sound competitions, I'm not going to say we're going to go do all the sound competitions. And again, it's got to make sense, but we are going to support the industry, understanding like not all of them, everything's not about return on investment. It's also about how do we grow this community? How do we be accepted? Now, I mean, jail was already accepted, but that doesn't mean you automatically have to accept Garmin. But we want people to trust us and accept us, but we also want to support the industry.
It's refreshing to hear that it will still be an important part of the infrastructure and training network going forward, because it's an invaluable tool for a lot of what we do. And I think even some of the dealers that have it and don't use it, I think really just don't understand all the capabilities that the tool has already, and even has the potential for more in the future. And so when I went to the JL Max training in Phoenix, it's pretty intensive. There's a lot to learn there. And I come from a background where I already know at least some about tuning. And, I'm sure people that have never tuned a car before, it's like this gigantic Mount Everest of knowledge that you have to try to consume within 3 days. And it's difficult, what I mean? It's difficult. I had a pretty good grasp on it, but I needed to learn more about the device itself and its capabilities, and especially like electrical measurements and stuff like that it can do. But it truly was, with Matt and Rob and Steve, was the best car audio training thing I've ever been to. And I implore you to keep doing that, because it really is very good.
Yeah, those guys are fantastic. And again, our goal is the more people we get trained and tuned and comfortable, again, the customer gets a better experience also.
Yeah.
And then from a Garmin standpoint, we have what we call field service engineers at Garmin. And JL had those too, but they had, I think, maybe 3 guys at one time. So now we've got 15 guys that are Max Tune certified. So we just almost 5 times of what they had before. So again, it expands Garmin's support system if there's something needed. So those guys can go out and help with dealers and how to do. Again, we're all in on the tuning and want to keep that.
To me, it's fascinating for the potential. I mean, my brain usually goes, oh, there's this part and this part. How do we connect these things and then maximize everything that's involved? And again, I mentioned I use Garmin products far more than I use any 12-volt products. And I know the power and capability of what's there on the fitness side, the technology that's there, the AI tools and everything else that's being integrated. That's the first and last thing I see every day. Is there a potential for more integration of the technologies between Garmin and JL, especially on products like the Max or stuff that we haven't necessarily even thought of yet, but that the resources of Garmin might bring to JL and the 12-volt community in general?
Absolutely. So Garmin is so broad, and there's a lot of stuff we do that people don't even know. And so, like, again, we're in aviation. Garmin developed a system that can land a plane by itself. So if ever a disaster, you push a button and it automatically lands the plane. Nobody else in the world can do that. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because we have all these technologies and these different segments we borrow from each other. So the marine industry is close to the aviation industry. So when it comes to radar or weather, we borrow technologies from each other. And, fitness, everything's around the watch now. Right. So in the marine industry, you can control your stereo with your watch. So there's already all kinds of these synergies amongst our ecosystem of different products that the expectation from our leadership is to absolutely leverage JL and Garmin together anywhere that we can.
And we touched on it before, but as far as, I mean, it sounds like you're not necessarily looking for integration between the brands as far as, we've talked a lot about Fusion and JL. It sounds like the intent here isn't to necessarily make JL grow Fusion or Fusion grow JL, but to just let Fusion be Fusion, let JL be JL, and then let those do their thing within their markets, not trying to cross things over.
Absolutely. There's some crossover, like the JL speaker profiles we'll make available in our Fusion amps. And so there's some things there just for whether it be an OEM customer or whatever, that might make some sense. There's some crossover there, but you nailed it. It's Fusion's going to be Fusion, JL's going to be JL. We're not going to blend the two. JL's got such a fantastic brand identity, and I'll admit we've lost some of that over the past 6 months, but we're going to get it back. We have to prove that to you, and you have to give us a chance to prove it to you.
For sure. You mentioned wanting to be involved in the sound off side of things, and it is enlightening to hear that July is kind of your crossover date for especially like the dealer network and everything else, because I feel like people simultaneously think this all has happened when they first saw it on Facebook in the past week or two or whatever, Yeah. It's like this has been in the process for a long time, but also not everything is done in that regard. In terms of allowing Garmin to prove itself, what avenues do you see Garmin proving itself, and where do you suggest people watch for that to happen? How do they track that progress?
Obviously we pay attention to social media a lot. And I'll say even today, the comments have died down a little bit from originally because it was brutal at first, and rightfully so. But we don't see as many of the hate comments. There's still some out there, which is fine. But, in those few months since we've done that, the JL content on those social media channels has not changed. The only thing that's changed is the name by the check mark. The same content
at the top.
The other point of contention has been the website, and JL's website was, it was really good because it was one company, one brand, like that's all they did. So, but
it was also ancient. I'll remind people that they liked the website because they learned it over the past 15 years of it being in existence. So, I'm not going to sit here and defend or slam it, but I think a lot of that is people having muscle memory on what to do, not necessarily because it was good or bad.
100%. And that's where the websites, when you migrate it to a company the size of Garmin, currently today, it does feel like some things get lost. But just know that, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's such a big undertaking that there are already improvements going on in the background, whether it be search optimization or sorting or the way things show up. That stuff's being worked on every day. So the website will continuously get better, but it's never going to say JL Audio at the top. It's, it is part of the bigger company of Garmin, but we will make it easier to find the products and sort, and customers will get pretty much all the data and search options that they had before. To your point, though, it's just going to look different. So they're going to have to understand that. But we're going to hopefully win back some customers that way and some dealers that way. And then new products. So, obviously I can't tell you a lot of things we're working on.
Right.
There's some pretty groundbreaking stuff from the JL name that's going to be coming out in the near future. It's going to take some people by surprise, and Garmin can't take credit for this because JL's been working on it prior to the acquisition. But what Garmin can kind of help with is, had we not gotten involved, it would still be a few years away. All this stuff takes time. We don't rush products out until it's ready. But there, you will see in the near future products from the JL brand, and then you're going to continuously push the envelope with new products over the next few years.
And I'll say on the website too, I think some of the fear there, and another reason I really wanted to talk to you about this, all just to get out in the open, but I think the fear when all those changes happen is that things become opaque and confusing, and that's when things get shuffled behind the scenes. And there are other brands that have done similar in the past, where all of a sudden specs are missing and never come back, and then the product gets changed in the backside, but nobody really says anything. And so it sounds like the goal is to still be transparent on all that. It's just a matter of getting it all where it should be, how it can be accessible and everything within the infrastructure of the Garmin website.
Yeah.
We're an ISO company, so we can't change specs without communicating it and stuff too. So We're very process driven. It's an engineering company, so it can happen. I'm not going to say it won't. It's a mistake if it does, and it can be, once it's pointed out, we can correct it.
A lot of the specs and all that kind of stuff is all still there. Like when you pick, like a W3 or something like that. And when you click on specs, when you're looking on that product page, it basically just shows you all of it for every driver in the series, rather than, like before you would pick like a 10W3 and then you click parameters and it only shows the parameters on just that one driver. Whereas now when you click parameters, it shows, it has like a little notation, for 8, 10, 12, 13. And it has the numbers for every single product in that line all on the same page, which is kind of helpful. But, the work that needs to be done really is in sorting and how do you find the products in the page,
100%. I actually had that conversation with our team yesterday, and they are actively working on that and admitted that it's not good. I think you'll see some incremental improvement over the next couple of months as we fully migrate everything in. Because like I said, when I say we had to change everything, their back-end systems, their infrastructure, everything at JL had to change to come over to be Garmin.
Yeah. And I totally get it. It's a huge undertaking, but it sounds like you're working on it. So
yeah, but time is of the essence. We do have to get it done. So we're not dragging our feet on it. So we hear it loud and clear.
Good.
The goal none of this is meant to be an ad or a campaign or anything else. It's really just trying to get the actual truth of what's going on. And usually the truth is a little bit boring, but I think if anything, the goal here is to have hope for the brand, because nobody wants it to die. Nobody is laughing at it or anything else. I think people have a strong reaction to it because they love it. That's what it comes down to. And it's good to hear that. I think the hope here from my perspective is knowing that it sounds like Garmin loves it as much as the community does, and as hopeful about it as we are. And I think you've been able to give a lot of hope for the future of it for yourself in this, being that you have background in it and you're the proponent of it and everything else. I mean, what do you yourself personally find most exciting about this journey?
So I've learned a lot. I kind of understood audio, and I realized I'm an idiot. So there's a lot of smart people out there.
There's a lot to learn every day.
So that part's been cool. And I'm like a kid in a candy store. Like I've been geeking out for the last 2 years. And I'm not going to lie, it's been hard, and we still got some hard days ahead of us. And I didn't want this to be, as you mentioned, not a sales pitch or a Garmin pitch, but it's hard. We don't have a platform to kind of get this across. And if you can't believe everything you read online, believe it or not, we just didn't have a good opportunity or avenue to get some of this truth out. So I just appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to do that. So like I said, I can't really tell you what's coming, but I've heard some speakers personally that will damn near make you cry. I mean, it is incredible. So I can't wait for the world to hear those.
Well, Dave, we certainly appreciate you taking the time. I know there's never enough time every day, and I know that feeling, but I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. And we'll be watching and hope we can talk more in the future and see some of the stuff in, historical context. I think it'll be awesome.
Guys, we really appreciate it.